I mean, first of all, I think you're very brave for not running winter tires where you are.
Winter is coming. For most of my coworkers, that means swapping out tires, which I don't. So I thought I should talk to some experts to see if that's an enthusiast thing or if I'm really missing out. Also, this plays into it somehow.
They're round and black, they smell, they go flat too, they cost too much, they're a pain, right? That's what consumers think.
A lot of times people will call it a distressed purchase. Because like you said, it's, wow, I've got to spend a fair amount of money on something that I don't think very much about. And it's either because I had a problem or it's worn out to the point where it's become unsafe.
A tire purchase is like going to the dentist. Nobody really wants to do it, but it's one of those things you just got to do.
Now that our spirits are up, let's get a few other things out of the way. No, I'm not Brian Cooley. I've met him, very nice person. And I'm also not any of the other knowledgeable roadshow staff that you've all come to know. But like most of 2020, we're going to get through this together. So let's get down to it. I've lived in Michigan my whole life. I haven't had an issue. I was always raised that if you have all-wheel drive, you're pretty good.
Clearly, four-wheel drive is better than two-wheel drive in any circumstances in winter conditions, because the idea of having traction across all your axles is much better than having traction just on the front or the back.
I feel a butt coming on.
You know, you got to have good tires, and it's true you have to have good tires. And there seems to be this, people are getting all-wheel drive or four-wheel drive, and they think they can do anything. And of course, that's not correct.
The tire provides the traction. The vehicle just has to try to use it in the best way that it can. And so if you don't have that traction to start with, there's really not a whole lot you can do in that situation.
In our area, that first snowfall, typically the first vehicles that you see off the road are an all-wheel drive or four-wheel drive crossover SUV, just because there is such a disparity between what the vehicle is able to do accelerating versus what it can do braking or turning.
The reality is that all-wheel drive, if you get stuck in a snowbank, all-wheel drive is definitely going to help you get out of that snowbank. What it's not really going to help you do is brake. So if you're in a snowstorm or if you have icy roads, all-wheel drive does not help you brake. And arguably, it doesn't really help you turn in those types of conditions either. There is some, small benefits to handling by getting an all-wheel drive vehicle, but it's not nearly the amount of benefit that you could get by having a dedicated set of winter tires.
Those brakes on your car, they stop your wheels. The tire stops your car.
Okay, so my entire life I've been wrong, and I'm starting to second guess that whole bravery quote. Might be better to just dive in and see what they're saying when they say winter, summer, all season.
There are very few, if any, regulations or industry standards that separate one from the other. It's kind of colloquial, just understood type things. I mean, no manufacturer would, produce a summer tire with, a winter compound on it because it would fail in the marketplace and, and what's the point? But in theory, they could.
Summer, high temperature performance, stability. Winter specifically, as those temperatures start to drop, the compound comes into play. And then an all season that basically covers both the spectrums, but I have to say is optimized between the spectrums, not at the extremes of those spectrums.
In general terms, your winter tire is quite square, and the shoulder of your winter tire helps it dig into the ice for better cornering. Your all-season and summer tires tend to have a rounded shoulder profile that helps with, water evacuation, and it almost works like the bow of a boat that if you have water, that rounded shoulder is able to sort of cut through it and move that water to the sides.
So that makes sense. Even though there aren't regulations, they all kind of have similar guidelines on what they want for each tire.
You'll typically see consumers buying winter tires in areas where there's severe winter conditions in a prolonged period of time.
So when you get below 44 degrees is when you should be really looking at a winter tire.
That's why we don't call them snow tires, is they're really cold and cooler weather tires to where they're designed to operate in that half of the year or that third of the year.
Your winter tire will typically be a softer compound and more able to remain flexible in colder conditions.
Typically, highly bladed, lots of cuts. Those blades keep the tread elements soft and pliable, because that's the secret, to have soft and pliable, low temperature tread elements.
Once you get into a winter tire, you will see, a heavily siped tire. So lots and lots of cuts.
And basically what this allows the tire to do is, as the compound and as the temperature drops, will allow the grooves to move and not let the blocks become solid as it begins to cool down, okay? The snow will also go in these grooves, and it will also trap the snow. Best thing for traction in snow is snow. So the idea is that these sipes will actually trap the snow, and the grooves trap the snow, and they traction off each other.
Okay, that makes sense. Compounds to keep the tire from going completely solid, and extra grooves and slits that help with grip. Things also got interesting because even though there aren't regulations to call a winter tire, there did seem to be a certification you could look for.
So the certification is actually a certification that's enforced by the Department of Transportation for TwinPeak Mountain Snowflake.
That really describes what the pictogram looks like. You know, it's a mountain range, 3 peaks with a snowflake in the middle. You'll find that on the sidewall of tires. It essentially represents that the tire has passed the certification for severe winter.
And that is actually based on a test. Tires have to achieve a certain performance standard in order to be branded with that. That's based on spin traction in medium packed snow. And it's compared to the SRTT, which is the standard reference test tire.
Okay, winter tires, I think I got it. Let's look at the other tires just to kind of compare.
First of all, if you think about a dedicated summer tire, it's typically a very blocky tread pattern or ribbish type tread pattern with a minimal number of sipes or blades. You know what I'm referring to there.
The surface to void ratio is much higher on a summer tire to give the maximum, should we say, footprint to perform on the maximum grip.
Summer tires are tires that offer typically superior performance in wet and dry conditions.
It works well and works at its optimum when it gets that dynamic temperature range. It's just soft enough to grip that dry or wet pavement, and it provides excellent wet and dry traction. But as the temperatures go down, 45 degrees or below, those compounds get more brittle and the traction goes away. And then you come to all-season tires, and all-season tires leverage compound advancements that can provide grip both when it's cold and when it's warm.
Those, as I'm sure you know, they need to straddle the line. They can't be as specialized as either a summer tire or a winter tire. And as a result, they often end up being compromised, or they almost always end up being compromised at both ends of the extreme. They're the classic jack of all trades, master of none type scenario.
I consider myself a jack of some trades, master of none. Anyway, with all the different compounds and tread patterns, I got a little curious about longevity.
Typically, a performance-oriented compound isn't going to have the longevity that an all-season tire does. It is softer, as they say, and winter tires are kind of the same way, except they're at the opposite end of the spectrum. They have tread blocks that move a lot due to the high sipe density, and the winter compound is softer, and so it wears faster as well.
You can think about it as an eraser while you're erasing your pencil marks on a paper. If you have a softer eraser, you'll have more material on the page. It'll help you grip better, but it won't last nearly as long as it would if it had a harder compound.
Okay, so all-season tires did still seem to be the happy medium, but there's still the whole issue of it not being that good in winter conditions.
So there's been pressure to improve the tires, especially their winter function and then their all-season capability. And this is the new class of tires that are called all-weather tires. And this has come about with compounds that actually work well in snow and cold weather, but still give the longevity and the wet and dry traction that people want.
The idea is they have the TwinPeak Mountain Snowflake that you'd find on a winter tire, but you can use them year round.
They're perfect for consumers that will see wintry conditions from time to time, but don't necessarily want to change out summer and winter tires every year. They want to have that winter capability at times.
All right, bigger question. What about price?
If you are going to have 2 sets of wheels and 2 sets of tires, that's typically going to be a more expensive proposition.
So, there's a lot of talk about, winter tires cost me that much more money. But, if you have 2 sets of tires and your one set would normally last you 3 to 4 years, but now you have 2 sets, so it lasts you 7 to 8 years. I mean, the real incremental cost over the life of your 2 sets of tires, assuming that you're not, leasing for 3 years and you're keeping it for a longer amount of time, that incremental cost isn't really that much greater than you would if you just had a single set of tire. And, the safety benefit that you get by going with 2 sets certainly offsets the incremental cost that you would have from having 2 sets.
Oh yeah, the paper thing.
Yeah, I think if there's one theme, it's that they do matter. They're the only part of a vehicle that touches the road.
If you take an 8x11 sheet of paper, that's about the surface area of tire touching the road. So if you divide that in 4, that's the footprint of 1 tire.
That's kind of the visual that we like to remind people, is that, this piece of paper is all that connects you to the road.
So I get it. Tires are important. Winter tires are going to make a huge difference, but I have to assume that lifestyle would play into your decision.
Do you go off-road? Do you use it in bad weather? Do you talk on the phone a lot? Do you use your navigation system? Because you might need a tire that's very quiet.
And then what do they like about the current tires and what don't they like? If obviously on their original equipment tires, there's something specific they don't like, you take them to a product that will address that.
Okay, so confession time. I normally drive an SUV, all-wheel drive, all-season tires. Never really had an issue. I also don't drive much. For the last 4 years, that's been my morning commute. So I just recently turned in a 2-year auto lease with less than 5,000 miles on it. Very embarrassing. Hope it's not a fireable offense. With that said, I'm not sure if I'm going to make the decision to now start getting winter tires, but at least I have all the knowledge I need. And hopefully some of it helped you make a better decision. Because I have to assume you have more fulfilling lives that involved a lot more driving than I do. Now, if you're really interested in swapping out your tires, we have a separate video with everyone's favorite Brian Cooley who can show you how. And, as always, for more information from people a lot more knowledgeable than me, go to theroadshow.com and subscribe to our YouTube channel.